Hello everyone, it's Zeri, Persian pen name on AO3. Once again here to read you some stories. It has been a heck of a week. Uh, I don't know how things are where you are, but down here in Texas it is frozen as shit. And we are not built for that. We're not prepared for that. We don't have the infrastructure. Um, yeah, the state shuts the fuck down when we get frozen. Thankfully, we haven't lost power. Although at home we have lost heating because water got in the air conditioner and then froze and expanded, and things that are supposed to move are no longer moving. So that's gonna be fun when that thaws. I have had the interesting luck of being stuck at work for several days, by which I mean very literally the roads were icy, I could not leave. Um, Thankfully, I work in the hospitality industry, so I was somewhere that had beds. Uh, yeah, so I have been sleeping at work for the past couple days. Not fun. I mean, it would have been fine. I had my laptop and everything, but I didn't have any spare clothes. So I showered in my clothes and I showered, washed my clothes, and then dried them with the little tiny blow dryer, which took forever. Forever. Do not recommend. Um, So, if you think inclement weather might be coming your way, get a little go bag together with some extra clothes. A couple shirts, some underwear, pair of jeans, maybe a bra or two, if that's a thing that you wear. Uh, Lots of socks. Better to have a spare outfit and not need it than need one and not have it. So that's that's been my week. And oh, and in your go bag, put some of your medications if you have medications that don't require refrigerating. So I had not, well, I took today when I got home, but I had not been able to take my meds since Sunday. So I missed 2 days of everything um, because I didn't have any meds with me. I can't take my testosterone with me because it requires refrigeration. I use a compounded stuff because the gel is, I'm sure it's probably fine. It's great, but it's more expensive than getting the other stuff just turned into a lotion. Uh, and I just rub it on my skin. So that's nice. Spouse likes to laugh at me because I'll put it on my thighs and then rub them together and I tell him, look, I'm a greasy cricket. So I'm very funny. Everybody else in the household is under all of the blankets. They're in their various rooms, just snuggled up. My mother-in-law's on her heating blanket. She's got the dog with her. Uh, Spouse is in his room. He's under like 3 different blankets. I am in the library. I've got my big gay blanket. Let's do. Yep. It's gray. It's got rainbow borders on the medallions. It's only about half done. But for a blanket that's larger than king sized, half done is still plenty large enough to keep me warm. Like, I'm swimming in this thing. But I've got the red and orange and purple stripes done, and some of the yellow. I like this one because I can just crank out the gray pieces, whenever. And then whenever I feel up to it, I'll just go and start edging them in whatever colors and pop them into the blanket, and there you go. So, this is actually the second time that I've tried recording this video today. I had one of our cats, Moxie, who's been on these videos before, in here with me to snuggle up and be my little personal space heater. But she chose violence and just wanted to knock over shit, um, including some soup that I had at my computer. because it was cold and I like soup. And so I had to clean up all of that in the middle of the story and keep her out of it because there were onions and that's bad for cats. Yeah, so she's decided to be a little asshole today, so she gets to go back in the bedroom and she's just gonna curl up under some blankets her own self. Also, I may have slightly taken another cat home, by which I mean I absolutely did that thing. Um, at the hotel, I feed and manage a little feral colony that's up there. And depending on when there have been several who come and go, and if they seem friendly and personable, then or if they seem like they're somebody's pet who got out, then they go to the shelter and they're like, hey, is this one chipped? Is he cool? Uh, and then yeah, go out and get adopted, and that's great. And if they're not, then if they're not personable, then they get trapped and neutered and vaccinated, and they go back to the hotel. Dang it. I was trying not to say hotel, but yeah, it's a hotel. Uh, and you manage the colony, and that's what. Well, you can look into TNR your own self. It's a good way of managing feral cats because they have their territory. They're going to defend it from other cats. There will always be. There's a niche there. There will always be feral cats trying to be in a particular territory. So, just get an established group, keep them healthy, and then that will do just a ton for. It keeps the feral numbers down. Anyway, it's a good thing. You should do it. But this little girl, Princess, sweet, sweet little orange tabby. Um, her and her brother used to hang. They've hung around for years and years. He finally conned somebody into letting him inside. Uh, he used to hang out with a friendly black cat, and I was pretty sure that friendly black cat was somebody's indoor-outdoor cat, or conned somebody into letting him in because he was also real sweet. And they're all fixed, vaccinated, and all of that. But brother and friendly fucked off, which is a thing that happens with feral colonies sometimes. Like they cage their way inside somewhere. Is what I choose to believe. It's entirely possible that I didn't see. They were very smart. I didn't see any sign of them having been hit by cars. So I didn't see any signs of predation. Um, but they stopped coming around, so I choose to believe they found an inside home somewhere. Uh, Princess did not, and had kept coming around, coming around, coming around. She's real sweet. She likes to crawl all over me, lets me pick her up and all that. We also call her Management. The spouse would be coming to pick me up and was like, Management would like to have a word with you. And it's Princess yelling for her dinner. We'd always said, okay, the day that she jumps into the car, that's it. She's coming home. We're going to have another cat. We've got 5 already, so. Well, no. Sorry, we have 4. We lost Ripley earlier this year. But we've got Bucket and Landis and Moxie and Nips. And then Trixie the dog, and then all of the cows. But yes, we had 4 cats, and she jumped in. It was cold. She was hungry. I hadn't. I went to my regular amount of work prep, and I had food for a day for her. I gave it to her in the morning when I got in, and I didn't have any for. My plan had been to go swing by the store on my way home, drop her off some dinner, and she would have lunch and dinner the next day. And then my days off, she scrounges for herself. But didn't have anything, and I couldn't get to the store because the roads were icy and I was stuck in the building. Um, so she was hungry. It's cold out. It was wet and gross, and I opened the car door, and she's like, "This is the place where the food comes from." So closed that car door and drove her home. So now she's in the bathroom where we've had many, many fosters in the past, and hell, we've had many fosters this year. Uh, well, we've had a couple. Well, okay, no, it's a new year now, so we've only had the one other foster. Uh, he was very short term. He just stayed overnight until I could get him to the shelter, and now he was real sweet too. Very good on the drive home, but he was somebody's lost baby who was not microchipped, and took him by the shelter, and they were like, "Oh, did he bite you? Did he do anything like that?" I'm like, "No, the worst he did was he climbed into my lap while I was driving him," and I was like, "Hey, don't get in the footwell, because I need those feet to drive." Um, but yeah, she just chilled in the back seat and occasionally yelled at me for the whole drive home. Uh, and now she's in the bathroom and occasionally yelling at me because she doesn't know where she is, and that's stressful. So once it's warmer and we know what in the heck is going on, I'll take her by the vet and just assume that she needs a good worming and updates on all of her shots and get her tested for anything that could pass off to the rest of the guys. And then we'll see how she does with Moxie. Our cats have to live separately because Ripley and Landis, they had beef. Uh, so Moxie and Ripley lived in one part of the house, and Landis and Bucket and Nips lived in the other part of the house. And we lost Ripley, so Moxie is alone, and Moxie does not like to be alone. She is a very social, sweet girl. She will stick her butt in your face. She will stick her mouth, her whole head into your mouth. She'll do it if you let her. Um, but yeah, and Princess is very personable with other cats, so I think that'll work out well. Um, they're both older ladies, both fixed, so I think that's going to go well. Worst case scenario, we keep Princess at our house for a couple of weeks while the weather turns, and then she goes back to the hotel. And she knows all of the places there, and yeah. But I'm hoping that we just keep her. I mean, unless anybody wants a sweet orange cat, I'll deliver. Uh, so yeah, that's been my week. Very tired. I mean, I slept a fair amount, but I don't know. It's been stressful. But anyway, there's going to be 2 videos this week. This one for the transition stories. It's going to be a nice Good Omens story, less than 3,000 words, as the normal ones. And then there's going to be a super fucking long one that's going to be a Witcher story. Pardon. That is explicit. Uh, because I started to read something that was on my to be read pile, and I saw that it was multiple authors, and they saw that they had a note saying, "Hey, if you want to do something nice, take a recording or a video or something of you reading this one for the first time." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I do that, so I'll do that." So that's not going to be it's not going to be with this video, but it'll be something else that I put on the channel, just as a bit of fun. I haven't read anything explicit uh, on air before, so that will be fun. I may actually wuss out. We'll find out. We'll see how it do. But I can do this one. So, alright. So this week, the story is called Tale as Old as Time. About 6,000 years, am I right? By Nenchen. It's once again in the Good Omens fandom. It's rated teen and up. No archive warnings apply. It is a Beauty and the Beast AU. Fluff and crack. Aziraphale is not afraid of giant snakes. Giant snake is very puzzled by cute man. No pressure from the curse. Alcohol. I wrote this until 2 a.m. A human AU, because else it's even harder to write and I just can't be bothered, sorry. It's a crossover, a crack crossover. It's got humor, sexual humor, mild nudity, briefly mentioned, and flirtatious Aziraphale. Part 1 of the Good Omens Fae retells. Summary: Aziraphale really does not want to disappoint his lovely niece Anathema, that only wished for one certain plant. What a lucky coincidence that it seems to be growing in this abandoned castle. What could go wrong with borrowing some of it? Surely the owner wouldn't mind. Oh, dang it. Okay, well, I'm trying to show this picture that it's based off of. I was trying to figure out a way to get that on there without messing things up, but clearly I didn't do that, so. Okay, back to the story. Aziraphale was merrily making his way through the forest. He had found all the books he had been searching for on his way through the neighboring cities, and was now on his way home, where his niece Anathema would surely await him with a pot of tea for another few hours of reading before night-time. The only weight on his mind was that he hadn't found the plant Anathema had asked him for. She needed it for a new spell she'd been wanting to try. He had asked everywhere, but they had kept telling him, rather rudely, that it was apparently a house plant and impossible to find anywhere in the middle of fucking winter. When he had told them that there was no need for that kind of language, they had had the gall to slam the doors in his face. Well, he truly had tried, and he'd found a near-complete version of her favorite book, The Nice and Accurate Prophecies of Agnes Nutter, which should cheer her up. He was hurrying along to get home soon. Footnote. He could never be away for too long, lest that fool Gabriel would ask for his niece's hand in marriage again. Not that she couldn't or wouldn't say no herself, no. He just couldn't bail her out of another case of attempted manslaughter. When he tripped on something. A look down revealed the something to be a plant that was just a tad too green and lush and generally alive for the middle of winter in a snow-filled, pretty much dead forest. When he looked up, he saw the plant came out from behind a tall metal fence. A fence around a castle he was pretty sure he had never passed before, and that according to all of the records and maps he owned, frankly shouldn't be there. His mind concluded the obvious: a magical castle. How lovely! With all of the broken windows and peeling paint, it appeared to be deserted. Closer examination revealed the plant he'd found to be a close relative to the one Anathema wanted. Now, normally, Aziraphale would not even think to go onto someone else's property. But trespassing onto an empty castle wasn't that bad. After all, someone had to go and take a look and see about the structural integrity of the thing. And taking plant samples was just scientific progress. Decision reached, he simply climbed over the fence. Or it would have been simple if his coat hadn't caught at the top and ripped. And he'd kept it in such pristine condition over the years. He huffed angrily. A bit miffed, he got on with his journey around the garden. No use crying over spilled milk, especially when there was no one to listen and pity him. When he rounded the corner and found exactly the plant he'd been looking for, his face lit up again. The sacrifice hadn't been for naught. As he proceeded to take a knife out of his pocket and sample some of the plant, he heard the snow crunching ominously behind him. He didn't turn, because ominous noises and such like was to be expected in a magical castle. What was, however, unusual for an empty castle was the voice. "What the fuck are you doing here, cutting my—" Aziraphale turned and stood face to face with a giant snake. The snake, faced with Aziraphale, aborted the original sentence and decided to go with instead. "Oh dear, I am terribly sorry. I assumed the castle to be empty, as it usually is with magic castles, and with the broken windows and all that," he said, smiling angelically. Well, it's not. Wait, why did you assume it's a magical castle? Well, I know it's not on any maps. The garden is flourishing in the middle of winter, and now there's a serpent who's about 4 times my length and able to talk. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but the conclusion was obvious. Excuse you, I am doing a lot for this garden. Don't just assume it's magic. Do you even know how many hours I have to scream at them so they don't dare to wither in this weather? The snake said, slowly backing him up against a wall, probably trying to seem menacing. His? Yes, his scales were a rather lovely sight close up, so Aziraphale completely missed the point of the maneuver in favor of admiring them. Your scales are breathtaking, he murmured. The snake man countered this with an aborted sound. Don't just change the subject. Flattery doesn't work right after an insult. Well then, my dear, I shall try flattering you again later. For now, how about we share this fine vintage I found today in apology? Let us go inside. Aziraphale brushed off the argument and passed a dumbstruck snake man towards the entrance of the castle. If snakes could blink, this one would have done so confusedly. But he did like wine, and he didn't like the cold, and he was way too cool to let anyone take him by surprise, so he followed suit. Wine sounds good, Angel. Why had he said that? Play it smooth, yes, smooth. You're a snake, and you're as smooth as your scales. But let me give you the grand tour first. You must know, this is a cursed castle, not a magical one. You'll want to keep close to me, Angel. At this, his human form could have delivered that line better. Lines like that just worked better with a wink. Slithering past the other, intentionally accidentally brushing past him, he opened the door and held it open with the tip of his tail, looking back at his guest. He had always been suave and charming, and he would not be bested by anyone. Not that there was another reason he'd want to flirt with this beautiful cherubic man. Nope. Said Angel stared at him in horror, but before Crowley could wonder about it, he already spoke up. Oh, I am dreadfully sorry for not telling you my name. How rude of me, my dear. I am Aziraphale, and what may I call you? Crowley, said Crowley, baffled by this very simple human interaction, seeing as he wasn't human anymore. This guy was just raking up points against him. His only solace was that his snake form was physically unable to blush, though, at the moment, it seemed pretty much unable to move, too. Delighted to make your acquaintance, Crowley. Now, let's get a wiggle on, Aziraphale said, striding past a stunned snake for the second time. But there was wine waiting, and some good company, too. So Crowley did, as it comes easy to a snake, get a wiggle on. Anathema had been fighting her way on her beloved horse Phaeton through a winterly forest for about an hour, fighting off the blistering cold and some wolves, when finally her spell showed her destination was close. She was really worried about her uncle. He was so smart, but for someone so smart, he could be so stupid sometimes. Something weird must have happened for him not to come home after dark, and she would not lose him. So she rode on in the direction the pendulum was showing. Looking up, she was faced with a gate to a flourishing garden. Ah, magical castle. Better be careful going in there, she thought, prepping with some spells in advance. Some castles had beasts inside them, so it was better to be safe than sorry. Easily climbing over the gate and in through a broken window, Anathema took great care to move without making a sound, closer and closer to the point the pendulum led her to. Light was shining out of a room into a dark corridor, and a hissing voice could be heard from within. And someone answering. Aziraphale's voice. She stormed into the room, ready to fight anyone and anything, but abruptly stopped at the scene unfolding in front of her. Her uncle, cheeks rosy from laughter, and probably of the empty bottles and full glass of wine in his hand, was laughing at a giant snake, which was chugging an entire bottle of wine all by itself. She put her hands on her hips, doing her best to deliver an unimpressed glare. Uncle Aziraphale. He turned towards her with a guilty-looking little smile. Oh, Anathema, is it this late already? Is it this late already? I'm terribly sorry to have worried you, but my dear Crowley over there had to show me his castle, and I must have forgotten the time over all the fun we had. The feast was simply scrumptious, and they sang such a lovely song while serving it, some kind of bebop, I think. And then he showed me his library. Oh, you need to see it. It's truly enormous. Not that size matters, as I always tell you, but such rare books, too, and in pristine condition. And I had promised him some wine in exchange for that plant you wanted, you see. And then he dug out some of his own vintages, and, dear, I'm rambling, aren't I? But he's just been such good company that I forgot to watch the clock. It would be rude to stare at it too often anyway, seeing as it's alive. Oop, one moment. Sorry for the interruption. Spells just got up. Apparently the heater's back on and working, so that's fun. Alright. It would be rude to stare at it too often anyway, seeing as it's alive. He stopped his rambling to counter her glaringly. Glare with that innocent smile of his that was very much not innocent. The snake, meanwhile, had dropped his bottle during the ramble, and was watching his ramble with as much of a smirk as a snake could muster. She sighed, dropping her hands to assume a more relaxed posture. "And what's your deal?" she said with a raised eyebrow, looking at him. Pardon. Pardon again. Her uncle let out a scandalized gasp. "Anathema, it is very rude to ask something like—" "Cursed for vanity," the snake answered, with a glance in Aziraphale's direction. Knowing her uncle as well as she did, she guessed, and she guessed correctly, that he'd went and done quite some things that were normally considered rude, like stealing plants and inviting himself into the place. The snake man didn't seem to mind, though, considering his very amused aura. "Oh," she said, "do you want me to fix that for you?" The snake turned his head towards her, fast as a whip. "What?" "I am a witch. Actually, the plant I wanted my uncle to get for me is for a curse-breaking spell. And the rest should be pretty much all standard stuff," she said. The snake's head went from looking at her, to her uncle, and back to her, as if he were watching a ping-pong match. Whatever that much. She'd learned the phrase from Agnes's book, and felt it fit the situation. Yes, that would be terrific." His tone was disbelieving. She'd bet the witch that cursed him had told him some bullshit about overcoming his faults or true love. "Okay, plant," she said, one hand already rummaging in her satchel for things that she needed, and one hand extended towards her uncle. "Oh, yes, of course, here you go." She took it and started murmuring, making calculations and drawing a modified pentagram, filling it with her materials. She only stopped once to ask Crowley what kind of snake he was, and how tall he had been as a human. "Almost 1.9 meters," he had answered, and made a weird expression towards her uncle that left the distinct impression of an incredibly bad attempt at winking. She had continued to stare at him, unimpressed, until he admitted to be 1.8 and 1 millimeter. When she was finally done, they were deep into another wine-soaked conversation. Something about dolphins. She rolled her eyes. "I'm done now." Crowley continued to laugh at something her uncle had said, completely ignoring her. She sighed. "Fuck it, I'll just do it," she decided. It was nearly morning already, and she was beyond tired. Stepping into the circle, she said the words, turned, and went out of the door. Surely somewhere in this gigantic castle there was a bed. She barely registered the high-pitched squeak coming out of the room she had just left. Her uncle could surely deal with it himself. In the corridor, the newly humanized servants were swarming her, all expressing their gratitude towards her, trying to rope her into celebrations of various kinds. She blinked, the slow way only a truly tired person could. Why did people always have to be so disregarding of her needs and their gratitude? Finally, one young man seemed to notice her distress and offered to show her to the bedrooms. "Oh, I love you," she joked as he helped her haul himself into the nearest bed, and promptly fell asleep. A pity, because she would have been very entertained by the shade his face had taken on. There was only one person in the castle that wore a deeper red than him. Crowley, former Snake Man, now Man-Man, was bathed in a crimson similar to the tone of his former form's underbelly. Aziraphale, too, was blushing more furiously than he had been all evening. This was because Anathema, in her sleep-deprived state, had not registered that the snake man, while dressed in noble robes, was not, and could not, be dressed in the matching pants. Thus, the sudden transformation had resulted in two very red-faced men, not facing each other, sitting on the couch very still and stiff, both with their jackets in their laps. Crowley tried to smooth out the situation with his natural charm. Well, that was rather, Aziraphale answered, and looked over to the most charming man he'd ever met, who still looked down at his feet rather intently. Aziraphale smiled softly and poked his shoulder, which made his eyes snap up to look back at him. They stared into each other's eyes for 2 full seconds before breaking down into hysterical laughter. The tension broken, Crowley took on a more relaxed position on the couch, grinning at the other. So, I'm guessing you want my library as your reward. You looked ready to move in at that part of the grand tour, he joked. Reward? Aziraphale blushed. I could never take a reward for helping you, my dear. Just take it as a kindness between neighbors. No, really, I insist. Here I was thinking that I was a literally damned snake for the rest of my life, and then you waltz in with your niceness and your wine and just boom, solve that little problem for me. You deserve a reward. Choose whatever you want, Angel, Crowley drawled. When he didn't get an answer, he glanced over to the side, where the other had taken on a thoughtful expression. Before he could ask about it, Aziraphale interrupted him with a smile on his lips. Well, my dear, from my reading, I understand it is common courtesy for the damsel in distress to give their saviour a kiss. He glanced over at Crowley with a smug expression that only deepened at the answer. Damsel in... Wait. Only if it's all right with you, of course, my dear. If it's all right with me, what do you... I mean, of course, but isn't the right order kiss and then transformation, and not the other way round, and... Again, Crowley was interrupted. This time, though, his brain short-circuited, not by itself, but because of a very soft pair of lips on his. His eyes fluttered shut, as words and some soft sounds escaped him. When they stopped again, he grinned wildly. You're a bit of a bastard. You know that, Angel. Said Angel returned the grin even wider. My dear, I'd argue just enough of a bastard to be worth knowing. The end. So, that was fun. I had not read this one before, that I remember. Cute little story. I like the art too, of course. It is adorable. I may end up not recording the longer Smut Witcher fic today, because now Spouse is awake and he doesn't like to be, he sits right back here and he doesn't like to be on video. And there's a lot of things that you can do with your partner. But I'm not sure if I would be able to make it through a long story, reading a long story of smut out loud with him right there as the peanut gallery. So we'll find out. Yeah, I'm already blushing. Y'all can see. I have no game. I'm not smooth. I'm about as smooth as Crowley, which is to say, not at all. So that was this week's story. We have our heat back on, so I'm excited for that. We should see if we can rig up something to keep the water from falling into the AC so that we keep having heat. That would be good. And other than that, I think we are all right. So stay warm, everyone. Be good. Be safe. If you can't be safe and good, then at least come up with some good stories from it. And then let me know, because who doesn't like entertaining stories? Take care of each other. Until next week.